Hello, my name is Lina Abed Ibrahim. My co-author is Cornelia Hamann. I will walk you through our poster presentation with the title German Litmus Sentence Repetition Task as a Screening Tool for the Identification of Specific Language Impairment in Bilingual Children in Germany, with a focus on the role of syntactic complexity and its interaction with working memory. A large body of cross-linguistic research has shown that complex syntax is vulnerable in children with a specific language impairment who struggle with complex constructions given their impaired language faculty and limited working memory capacities. At the same time, it has been shown to be a relative area of strength in bilingual typical language development compared to other language domains such as vocabulary and inflectional morphology. As a result, it has been incorporated into a number of diagnostic tools for bilingual children, including the German Litmus Sentence Repetition Task. A number of studies observed the link between working memory abilities and production and comprehension of complex constructions in both monolingual and typically developing and language impaired children. And it is assumed that computationally complex constructions interact with working memory capacity, especially when the processing load increases in cases of multiple complexity factors. However, there are inconsistencies in the studies as to which working memory component, verbal working memory or verbal short-term memory, which best explain performance in different lingual, monolingual versus bilingual, and clinical, typically developing versus SLI groups. So this study addresses two questions. The first one is, how does cumulative syntactic complexity or personalized in terms of WH movement, syntactic embedding, and movement intervention interact with the repetition accuracy in the different monolingual, bilingual, typically developing and language impaired groups? And it also looks at whether monolingual and bilingual children with and without SLI demonstrate different patterns of association between performance and language and working memory measures. So here you can see our participants. We have a total of 106 monolingual and bilingual children with and without language impairment. Age range was 5, 6, and 9, 2. Bilingual children had Turkish, Arabic, and Portuguese as first languages and started acquiring German alongside their L1 simultaneously or upon kindergarten entry with a minimum of 18 months of exposure. In order to investigate effects of syntactic complexity, the sentences of the German sentence repetition task were divided into 4 levels of complexity, as can see being here, depending on the number of syntactic operations involved in the derivation of structure. The factors were WH movement, syntactic embedding, and intervention to WH movement in form of NP restriction as an additional complexity factor. So level 0 comprises no factors at all, while level 3 comprises 3 factors. Working memory measures were forward and backward digit span assessed via the WISC, and language measures were expressive receptive vocabulary as well as the morphosyntactic developmental level. So let's take a look at the results. So here we see the 4 groups and the different syntactic morphosyntactic levels, and we see that repetition accuracy decreases in all groups as a function of increased syntactic complexity, with the most pronounced effects in the mostly imbecilic groups, who showed no significant differences. What we didn't expect to see was a significant difference between MOTDs and BTDs on levels 1, this is the red one, and 2, where the MOTDs outperformed the BTDs. We will take a closer look at that in a bit. We also looked at within group effects for syntactic complexity, and we found in the MOTDs we only found effects for group 0 versus 2, and in the BTDs we found significant effects for all structures, basically all group levels contrasted to each other. And mostly in Beasley, we found significant effects when the level 0 were contrasted to 1 or 2, but not when they were contrasted to each other, suggesting that the presence of one complexity factor is sufficient for a computational breakdown. So because we found a significant difference between MOTDs and BTDs on levels 1 and 2, we took a closer look at the individual structures featured in these 2 levels, and we suspected that there might be an age effect. So we split the bilingual group by age into a younger and an older group. Here you see the age ranges, and what our hypothesis was warranted. We found a significant effect only for the younger kids, but not for the older kids. And for level 1, there were significant differences on finite complement clauses, long passives, and on also structures featured in level 2. And if you take a look at the individual structures, object WH questions, subject relative, object relatives, you notice that all of these feature a movement, and for all of them, exploiting case cues is necessary for the accurate repetition. With respect to working memory and language measures as possible predictors, we first look at the global score and sentence repetition task. And in monolingual, typically developing children, performance was mainly predicted by receptive vocabulary, and only level 2, which featured 2 complexity factors, was necessitated more like VM abilities, and was predicted by 4-digit span. In bilingual children, we saw an interaction, like when took a look at the global score between FDS and receptive vocabulary, expressive vocabulary. So there was 4-digit span was a predictor, and a level 1 was only predicted by receptive vocabulary, but the structurally more complex level 2 was predicted by 4-digit span. For Mosleys and Weasleys, we only looked at the global score due to the lack of variance on the individual levels, and performance was predicted only by morphosyntax, and there were no significant contributions of VM. So if we want to summarize, we found, like in line with previous studies, repetition accuracy decreased in all groups as a function of syntactic complexity, and we found an interaction between age and performance on structures of level 1 and 2, which involved a movement with case marking, where case marking is necessary for theta role assignment in the BTD group. We saw that performance on level 2 was only predicted by 4-digit span in both typically developing groups, which confirms that processing of computationally more complex structures necessitates more working memory capacities. And we speculate that BTD relied more on working memory for processing structures of level 1, might be the result of their poor L2 vocabulary skills, for which they compensate by their intact working memory capacities. We were surprised not to find interactions with working memory in the SLI groups, which is at odds with previous studies. Then we took a closer look at the distribution of the spans in our SLI data, and we found that there was little interindividual variability, both for forward digit span and backward digit span, which might explain the fact that we didn't observe an effect. So to sum up, the findings of the study are of great relevance, not only for theories and causes of SLI, but also for shortening and ameliorating the task to ensure maximal diagnostic accuracy in bilingual populations. Thank you very much.